So we're going to open the November 20th meeting of the East Long Meadow Planning Board. I need to announce that we are recording this for the minutes, and we are also recording it for LCAT. I have to ask, anyone else here is recording the meeting? Please identify yourself. Hearing none, we'll proceed. We do not have the minutes. Okay, we have present John Torsha, Lou Morabito, George Kingston, and
Rustin.
Thank you. Got it. My mind is going.
I missed one meeting, and look what happened.
My mind is going. My mind is going. Okay.
I dressed up for the meeting.
I know. John, you want to make a motion?
Yes. I'll make a motion to move out of order items number 5, 6, and 7.
Okay. These are signed permits, and they'll take us about 2 minutes to do.
Yeah.
So
if anybody's there here specifically for them, they don't need to wait through all the public hearings.
So who's going to be our clerk tonight?
I think
John should be. Okay.
Let me get my
So you want to get those 3 signed permits?
Yes.
Which I see 2.
What's the first one?
The first one is
Whitestone Marketing.
And the other 2 maybe come
Together. Okay.
All right. So number 5, case sign application by Whitestone Marketing Partners, Go Graphics, the business owners Jim White and Gary Stone of 31 Benton Drive. The property owner's name and address the same. The contact person Meg Moriarty. The square footage of the proposed sign is 100 feet. It is not freestanding. It is attached to a building. It is projection, if any, is 5 inches. Setback from the property line is 100 feet. It's a permanent sign. It is illuminated. There is already one existing sign. Total square feet of existing sign 50 to be removed. Total square feet of proposed sign is 100. Same applicant. The estimated cost is $500.
And this has been approved by the building inspector.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next one.
Let's see. Allied case sign permit application by Allied Flooring and Painting of 55 North Main Street. Tony Tedeschi and Mario Tedeschi. The property owner's name is Dan Burak. The proposed square footage of the sign is 24 square feet. It is freestanding. It's 15 feet above the ground. It is not attached to the building. There is no projection. It is set back from the property line of 20 feet. Distance to the nearest side yard line is 70 feet. It's permanent and illuminated. There's already 2 existing signs. The total square footage of those existing signs is 72 square feet. The number of proposed signs is 1 with a total square footage of 24, which would come out to a total of 96 square feet total. The applicant is Sign Techniques. The estimated cost is $450.
And again, the building inspector has tentatively approved this. We have a motion to approve.
So can we see if anyone's here representing
anyone
the property owner or the sign company?
Sign company, business owner.
So can I ask you a question? So why are the signs up before you get the approval to put the signs up? There are rules in place to be followed, and
Yeah, I apologize for that.
So-
We got an email from the building inspector saying that he approved the permits. So we had gone forward and made the signs and installed, and then afterwards realized that we have to still come before the planning board for approval, and then it goes back to the building inspector. So I apologize.
thank you. No, thank you.
So do I have a motion? Do
I'll move to approve.
I have a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. All right. We've got another sign permit request from Allied Flooring and Painting, 55 North Main Street. Business owners' name and address are Tony and Mario Tedeschi. Dan Burak is the property owner. The square footage proposal of the sign is 48 square feet. It's not freestanding. It would be attached to the building. Its projection, if any, is less than 8 inches. It is a permanent sign. It would be illuminated. The number of existing signs is 2, which comes out to 72 square feet total. This proposed sign would make a total square footage of proposed and existing signs of 120 square feet, and the applicant is Sign Techniques. The estimated cost of this sign is $2,400.
That one. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Move on to our first hearing. The first one on the agenda actually was for 855 Summers Road. And John, will you read the email into the,
Yes.
from Donna Paquin?
Donna Paquin. Ms. Broader, attached, please find the printout from the provider portal on mass.gov/EEC regarding my request and acceptance and change of my daycare license from 8 children to 6. These documents show my info, my transaction request on 11/9/18 and the capacity at 6. As soon as I receive the official license, I will email you a copy. I am at the mercy of the state of Massachusetts in their printing of that new license. I respectfully submit my withdrawal of my applicant for a special permit without prejudice, so I will no longer be needing it at this time. Thank you for your diligence in this matter during the upheaval and reorganization of your office. I hope that things go more smoothly in the future. Respectfully, Don Paquin. So 855 Summers Road.
Do I have a motion to allow her to withdraw without prejudice?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now the fun starts. 330 Chestnut Street. I'm going to read the legal notice.
Yes. Dear Mr. Florence,
No. There should be a legal notice.
There is, they're all together, so.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
There you go.
okay. All right. The East Long Meadow Planning Board invites you to attend a public hearing and public outreach session on November 20th, 2018 at 6 p.m. in the School Committee Conference Room at East Long Meadow High School, 180 Maple Street. For 330 Chestnut Street, petition by applicant to consider a zone change at 330 Chestnut Street, a 40 1/3 acre site from industrial garden zoning district to mixed use zoning district. Applicant's agent, attorney Jane L. Mentalaski, Fitzgerald Attorneys at Law, 46 Center Square, East Long Meadow, Mass. And another application, Rear Pease Road, petition.
No, just the first one, just the first one. The first hearing. So we'll open the hearing on this petition. I want to make clear that what we're hearing is actually a bylaw change that would create a mixed-use district. Okay, there are 3 steps in any of these processes. The first step is to actually create the district, which doesn't exist right now. So we don't have a mixed-use district. We don't have a mixed-use district bylaw. We have to write that first and get that accepted. Once that happens, we then need to have a hearing to assign that district to a particular piece of property or properties. And then thirdly, once that's done, we need to go through whatever the new bylaw requires, whether it's site plan or special permit, in order to approve the actual project. So we're not dealing with the actual project tonight, we're dealing with a proposal to create a mixed-use zone bylaw. Okay? So just so everybody's on the same page with that. We may hear some things from the applicant about how wonderful it's going to be, but we're not dealing with the project itself tonight. We're dealing with the proposal of a bylaw. And you know, we actually, do we have something to start working on or not?
We have received a letter,
Okay.
and I believe that we have the applicant agents present to discuss the zoning petition change.
Okay. So, we come forward and present.
I'm using the mic for the TV, right?
Right.
I've never been accused of somebody not being able to hear me. Good evening, John Tykina from M&M Realty Partners. We are one of the property owners of 330 Chestnut Street here in East Longmeadow. And we are here tonight to start anew the process, hopefully, of creating a mixed-use district here for the community. And what I'd like to do this evening is really talk to the board a little bit about what types of things you would see in a mixed-use district. M&M Realty Partners, we are national developers, New Jersey, Florida, California, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New York. And really most of what I do now is our mixed-use projects. It is really how development is occurring, particularly in suburban locations. Many suburbs are finding that they would like, to have this type of use in their town, that it provides housing opportunities that are not present in their communities, that it provides retail and restaurant and commercial opportunities that are not present in their communities, and it provides a lifestyle that may not be present in their community. The reasons for these things, are many. We have, kind of the dual waves that are moving through. You have the silver tsunami that's coming in here, where our baby boomers are aging, and they're much more active than ever. I heard today that 69 is the new 49, so I'd like to go with that. And that I'm somewhere in the middle there. But people that are active like that, et cetera, are not necessarily wanting to care for their 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath, single-family home on a half-acre land. So, a mixed-use community is the type of thing that can exist in a community, can be accommodated. As you'll see from what I'll talk about this evening, and all the images that you'll see tonight are M&M projects. This is stuff that we built, own, operate, and maintain. So you'll see a little bit of pride in what I'm showing you, but it's also a type of lifestyle that is really, really very pleasant. One of the terms that you'll hear me say is the term concierge living, because we do view it to be a kind of a full-service community, even if it's for sale, for rent, whatever the case may be. You're in a condominium, you're in a townhome, you're in an apartment, whatever it may be. We provide concierge living where we have a full-time concierge on site from 7 in the morning until 10 at night. Admittedly, most of what we do is receive Amazon packages, but also the ability to do things in such a way that it accommodates, what is the 21st century lifestyle, where folks are working, they're traveling, they're working out, they're visiting friends and family, etc. So you're not always home to take care of everything, and we help out with those type of things. So what I'd like to do is take you through some images that show types of places and uses that could be present in a mixed-use community. You'll see they are all sizes and scales, and I want to be very, very clear that these are types of places that will range from 2 stories in size up to 5 and 6 stories in size. We have no idea what is appropriate for East Longmeadow, and that's what we're here to work with the planning board on, and then ultimately work with the council on, is what is the size, scale, what are the uses we want to see there, what is the mix we'd like to see there, what is the right fit for the community. And I, for one, and I know my company and my development partner, Joe Conley, from M&A Longmeadow, who's owned the property for the last 18 years, we don't come in with any preconceived notions. We're here to work with the community, to work with the planning board, to draft the bylaw that the planning board thinks appropriate, and work with the council on a bylaw that they think is appropriate, and then see how that would be applied, what the benefits and impacts of that would be, and hopefully have a very robust dialogue with the community We were very, very pleased when we heard this would be a listening session as well, a public information session, where we could get some feedback from the community as well to see what types of things we could be looking at. So, moving to the first image here, and I did provide hard copies as well, so you have something to take home with you. But this actually is our project in Cherry Hill. This is a mixed and multiple use project. This is 3 stories here. The ground floor is retail and restaurants. The second and third floor is office. Immediately behind this and to the right are residential units and apartments and townhomes. And I'll be showing you photographs of those as well. But this functions as a true mixed-use community where you can live, work, shop, play, do all those things right here on our property in Cherry Hill. This is another view from the plaza. You know, this is everybody's favorite shop with the Christmas tree and all the decorations out there. We are very pleased and proud of this. This is also, this photograph was taken in 2016. The project at this point is 10 years old. So you can see, still looks as pretty as the day it was built. We're very pleased with with how it is aged. You see the high quality materials, those types of things. They're all the things that are hallmarks of these mixed use communities. You see the ground is pavers and bricks and things, extensively landscaped. You need to create these pedestrian environments, these places that people want to dwell in. They don't mind sitting there waiting for somebody to pick them up or waiting for their appointment at the dentist office or whatever it is, because it's a delightful place to be able to sit and hang out. And those are the places that we'd like to create. And then finally, a final view again, you can see the plaza. Again, high quality, really a delightful place. You see in the front over to the right, you see Kabuki here. I have a pointer, I don't need to walk up to the screen like I'm 9. You see these restaurants are here. This is a Chinese restaurant here, and then up in front of it is Cheesecake Factory, one of the more successful cheesecake factories in the country. This is our project in Somerville. A little tall, probably much taller than we'd like to talk about for here. But what this is called The Edge. This project helped transform downtown Somerville. We were brought in by the mayor and said, you know, their county seat, very wealthy, very, very wealthy county, probably one of the top 20 wealthiest counties in the country. We were brought in by the mayor there to help out and say, my downtown is here, but I only have a downtown from 8 in the morning until 5 at night, 4 days a week. What can I do to help, invigorate my community? And we made this investment 5 years ago. Again, you see very high quality at the streetscape, the decorative lampposts, high quality materials, pedestrian scale on the building. Really, very nice example of what mixed-use development can be. But through this investment, there's now 5 more that were done in town by other developers. By them coming in and saying, yeah, if this thing can be here and be successful, we have a Wolfgang Steakhouse in town. The other addresses on the Wolfgang's list are Beverly Hills, New York City, Tokyo, and Honolulu, and oh, by the way, Somerville, New Jersey. So everybody was very pleased with that, and it's all very, very successful. But again, high quality placemaking, high quality materials with a mixture of uses. This is the lobby of The Edge. You can see here's our concierge, and again, high quality places that you want to sit and hang out. You don't necessarily want to run up to your apartment. You're very happy to be here, have a meeting in the conference room, be able to sit and scroll through your phone while you're waiting for your Uber or whatever the case may be. As you can see, high quality materials, high quality placemaking. One of the units, again, the units are typically much smaller, obviously than a single family house would be. Our typical 2-bedroom unit is usually a little over 1,000 square feet. A 1-bedroom unit may be as small as 700 square feet. Admittedly, it is not single family living. And again, it's a challenge, and I was with the planning board last night that you know, I asked them, where do you all live? And I got 9 answers that they lived in 9 single-family homes, you know, on half acres with 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. And to talk to them about places that were, you know, 700 square feet, you know, was really out of their, you know, comfort zone. But as they talked about it, they understood that this type of thing, you know, is where they can see themselves being in the future. Maybe not today, but potentially in the future where you have that type of thing. But again, high quality materials, high quality design. Again, really beautifully done. It's a wonderful way to live. You need great closets. I show this. This is the difference between your 1954, you know, 4-bedroom single-family house, 4-bedroom 2.5 bath single-family house, and our apartments. Our master bedrooms and our master closets are those places that you can see yourself, even if you're coming out of a single-family house. That's where you want to be. So again, these are the types of places that we're creating. High-quality recreation areas. Again, it's a place to live, work, and play. This is our clubhouse facility in the Edge. Again, very high quality, a delightful way to live. Business center. What we're finding, you know, is more and more people are working from home. They're working from home 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 5 days a week. My daughter-in-law is 28 years old, and she's been working from home for 5 years because her company said, you're out and you're going home. I'm not going to have an office space for you anymore. But to be able to have a space where you have high quality materials you can work with, as well as a place where you can interact with people, is incredibly valuable. So again, these are the places that we like to create. You could have a meeting, so you don't have to have it in your living room and, you know, clear off the coffee table, but you could have a meeting in a professional setting, and be very appropriate. And, you know, for folks, you know, for example, my daughter-in-law would not like you to come to her house. She would much rather be in this location. Mailroom, where we receive packages, all those types of things. Second type of housing would be townhomes. You know, folks that, again, are not ready to, you know, make the full break from 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. They want, you know, to drop down to 3 or 2 bedrooms and you know, a garage and all those types of things. We have townhome type living we think would be appropriate. Again, extremely high quality materials, great design, you know, interesting. But you see, when you get inside the units, you know, they live large. You know, our townhomes live large, great open spaces, great entries, really a delightful way to live. See our high quality kitchens. Again, this is Cherry Hill, where you see that this is a project that, again, is the townhomes there are 15 years old. You can see where that comes because you have the black appliances. You know, that's when we date ourselves. But again, great kitchens, granite tops, all those good things. Again, luxurious master bedrooms. So you want the master bedroom, the bathroom, the master closet, all of that to be exactly the same as you would find in the most luxurious single-family home is what you have here. Okay, great masters. Again, with the townhomes, they can be all different sizes and shapes. Again, really delightful way to live. Great master bedrooms. This is our clubhouse in Cherry Hill. It's really the nerve center of the community. This clubhouse right now serves about 550 units. We're about to build a second one that is going to accommodate the next 250 units that will be there, and ultimately this will accommodate 600 and that will accommodate 350. But again, this clubhouse is the nerve center of our community. Again, with our great pool, our concierge, and again, high quality materials, great looking place. This is my favorite place to go to work. So whenever I get the chance to go down and hang out in Cherry Hill, this is my favorite place to be. You see a fitness center, very heavily used, all hours of the day and night. Conference centers, pool, all those great amenities. Now these are the apartment type units in Cherry Hill. These are rentals. Again, much bigger scale than we'd be talking about, I think, for for East Long Meadow. But again, great materials, great design, interesting buildings. And again, this building is 6 years old in this picture. So you can see it looks as nice as the day it was built. And again, great units, nice and open. Really the type of living that, these are the type of units you'd see in any single family home. They're a great way to live. Great bathrooms. And again, our clubhouse facility. So that gives you a flavor of the types of things and uses that you have there. So we think a mixed-use place would have retail and restaurants, office service uses, personal service uses that would be on the ground floor. We would think that would be only enough to be an amenity. It's not looking to supplant any of what's happening here, downtown. Not looking to, supplant what's happening on our commercial district. It's just an amenity for the community there. So you have this type of mixed-use vibe. And then we'd look for a mix of housing for townhouses, for condominiums, and for apartments. So that you have people that could address their full range of living. And what we find with the apartments is, from the apartment side, we're kind of getting two different users. One user is the classic, apartment person. My daughter at 26, who's moving out of the house and is going to go move into her apartment, and that's her first housing choice, and she moves along. And that's a portion of our apartment market. The second part of our apartment market are the folks that live in the community, whether it be Cherry Hill or Somerville or Morris Plains, and they choose to sell their 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath house and move into an apartment so they can have that type of living, but without the whole mortgage and all that kind of thing, and they typically have a second unit. They have a place down in Florida, they have a place out on the Cape, they have a place in Block Island, a place down the Jersey Shore. And that's someone, that's my age, that's in their 50s or 60s, that just doesn't want to deal with the upkeep of the unit, and that way, they can lock the door on Friday afternoon and head off to the Cape or head off, wherever they're going and not have to worry about it. So we think all the different types of residential are appropriate there. We think the mix of commercial is important. It provides for that little bit of activity, that little bit of interest that we think helps create a great place. So, as I said, we don't have any preconceived notions about what it is. We don't think it's 2 stories, we don't think it's 10 stories. It's somewhere in the 2, 3, 4 club, and that's what we'd like to work with you on. And what's that mix? What's the mix of height? What's the mix of residential density? What is the right amount of commercial to be there? And really put together the right special sauce for a mixed-use district. That's appropriate for East Long Meadow, and we'd be interested in doing that. We would, as we go forward, I think, we all know we were here before, and we've learned a little bit. So we'd like to, be able to bring to the planning board, the information that you would like. So first of all, I'd like to hear that. But we think at a minimum you need to hear what are the financial impacts, what are the school impacts, what do we think the public service impacts are, so we can bring that type of information, of a mixed-use district, because they're different. Whereas, on 100 single-family houses, you're going to get 25 kids, or so, which we heard from the school board. But for a mixed-use community, for a unit that's 2 or 3 stories, that type of thing, we know we're going to get, 6 or 8 kids. For a townhome community, if you have 100 townhomes, you might get 10 or 12. Again, it's very, very different impacts than the typical single-family homes that we're used to here in East Long Meadow. So, we need to bring that information to you, work with you together to make sure that, we have a good explanation of what that is, so that, as we put this together, we all agree on what the impacts are going to be and what the impacts aren't going to be. You know, that we're not, you know, we're looking at much lower traffic, we're looking at, you know, much less truck traffic, all those things. And we will, you know, and then you need to compare it to, when we get to the rezoning, hopefully if we get to the rezoning stage, you compare it to what the current zone is. To say, hey, what could you build there, you know? If you look to zone this piece for something else, well, what could you build there today? What would those impacts be? If you zoned it for a mixed-use community, what could it be? What would those impacts be? And we think we can have that full conversation with the planning board, and then again, hopefully with the council.
Thank you. Let me lead off the board discussion on this. Basically, for this board, the description that we need at this point to write the bylaw is what uses would be in this district. And by that I mean we have a table of uses right now. And to go through that, for you to go through that and see which of those uses you would like to include in this district. Okay? That's kind of basic to the zoning process. The second, obviously, is the table of dimensions. That's your setbacks and your heights, basically. We need to see that. And then there's the other use regulations, which would be the mix, the parking formula, the amount of site coverage, amount of open space, if you will, impervious. That would be in the other use regulations. Finally, I've been talking with people about this because obviously it's a hot topic, and I keep hearing the word special permit from some of the people who are going to be also voting on this. So I think that that's something we need to consider very carefully, is do we want to make this under special permit? John, you have any comments or questions at this point?
I think you hit a lot of the things that, you know, we're going to need. I mean, we're going to be parsing through this. This is obviously going to be a long process, but yeah, it's important to pick up, you know, the key facts, you know, the demographics, the data of, you know, some of these previous developments that you mentioned. You know, the impact on schools, that's, I think, a really important thing. Emergency services, you know, this is, you know, we all know this, you know, this is something very new for this type of community. You know, we sort of have that small town type of tradition as a town. So this is, if we're going to end up, if this is the way that this town wants to go, we're going to have to get it right and really go through the details. But I agree with what a lot of what George said. So.
Lou?
I agree with you, George, everything you said, so I don't have anything to add.
I think the density, the number of housing units is a big deal,
Yes.
obviously. But I want to go back to one thing that you started to mention. So I'd like almost a kind of a detailed history of the property. So you said your partner has owned it for 18 years. Mm-hmm. And in that time, there were numerous things that went in there and failed. And given...
Or moved out.
Or moved out. And given today's economic environment, what could logically go onto a piece that big? And what values would they bring to the town versus any value that you would bring to the town if you did this project? I think that's important. It's been an eyesore for many years, and it's laid fallow and really has not generated any beneficial income to the town at all. I think the public safety expectations, I think traffic impact. You know, I'm glad that you brought up your demographic mix. The person right out of college here, the older person here, so that's not going to have the same traffic impact as a 40-year-old with 3 kids coming in and out the whole time. So would love to see your traffic counts and patterns in other projects that you've kind of done, so it gives us an idea of what we could expect. I'm sure down the road there's going to want to be a discussion about the intersection at Chestnut and Shaker. It's not the best intersection out there, and what impact there might be there. And then I think the financial benefits to the town should be put on the table as well. The last time you were in here, you had discussed a certain number that would generate almost $2.8 million of tax revenue to the town. I'm sure people would like to think of ways to be able to use that, if it's not just reducing taxes altogether. But I think also the long-term, what happens if it fails, I think to me, is the biggest thing to think of, because we have to consider that, because we're planners, we're planning board, so we have to think the worst case scenario, what happens if? So if we put your project in, and it went well for 20 years, and then it failed, I mean, I don't know if there's case history in other locations, or something you could share with us that you could kind of pull up, because I think that's...
There actually is a lot of case history
Yeah.
on this type of thing, because
Yep.
planners, for better or worse, like to
Yep.
look at those types of things. I like to use Cherry Hill as the example of what do we do over the long term. We started in Cherry Hill in 2003. Built the first 550,000 square feet of commercial space. Built the first 240 units in the first 4 years. And then 2008 happened. And we basically had to sit and wait. And wait a little while. We kept it all pretty nice. But, you know, we had to sit and wait a little while. And then, you know, in 2010, we were able to build it and, you know, work it through.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why you try to put things in for the long term.
Right.
But, you know, that's an example. But there are plenty of examples, fortunately or unfortunately, of this type of thing that have failed and be reinvented, et cetera. I live right next to one of the more famous ones, which is called Princeton Forestal Village. It was an attempt by Princeton University to create a downtown, you know, out in a farm field. And it's beautiful. It actually looks very much like that. But it doesn't have any housing at all. And you go there at 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon and you could fire a cannon down Main Street. There's nobody there. And it's failed, you know, on 3 different iterations. And now it's being reinvented on the 4th as office space. You know, so the real estate doesn't go away. It still looks great. But it's, you know, it's not what it is. But
Something similar in Hingham, Mass, right on the water.
Right.
Actually just put in new Wahlburgers in there to try to generate some
Right.
traffic.
you know,
Okay.
you keep working because it's
Yeah.
you know, it's generally still good real estate. But
Those are,
Oh, go ahead, Russ. No, go ahead. Well, how many units were we talking about in East Long Meadow?
well, the prior bylaw was I think 10 to 15 units an acre. Was what the prior bylaw is. You know, I don't know.
It was 600, I think, overall.
600 was the maximum. You know, and whatever it would be, you know, would be something that we, you know, would have worked out. You know, we don't know, is that the right number? You know, is 4 stories the right height? You know, all those things are on the table for discussion with the board and with everybody. You know, and you know, fortunately we have Ms. Broaders now, and you know, it's going to help us out with, you know, we're into a little planner stability, I hope. And, you know, and density is a counterintuitive thing. As density goes up, actually traditional impacts go down because you get a different person. You don't get the 40-year-old with the 3 kids living in a dense place. You get the single 26-year-old, or you get the 55-year-old couple that wants to go do, you know, all sorts of things because they're, you know, youngest they just made their last college payment and they're ready to go, you know, go crazy. I'm 10 years from now, but
Well, one thing, in looking at particularly height, but also density, I think I would appreciate it if you could consult with our fire chief, because we need to find out whether his current equipment, what his current equipment is capable of, okay? We obviously don't want to put in a building that requires us to buy a new fire truck necessarily, okay? Something that, you know, our ladders aren't tall enough or whatever. I'm totally ignorant about that, but that's the kind of basic information that is going to help us build this table of dimensions, table of uses appropriately, so that you know, I mean, even if you're 2 stories, but you've got, well, we know even at 2 stories, if you've got a lot of people in a building, it takes a lot more fire trucks to take care of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you know, we've got a couple of buildings in town like that now, where senior living, okay, congregate living. So they've looked at those issues, but I'd like to get a statement from them saying, this is what we can handle. And if you go higher than X, Y, Z, we're going to have to, somebody's going to have to spend some money to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the nuts and bolts, I mean, of this. The pictures are wonderful, and I'm sure these are great places to live. We've got to write a bylaw that will stand on its own, because you know, you may well put this in, and 20 years from now, somebody else may come in and say, well, gee, I'd like to do a similar thing elsewhere, and that's the bylaw they're going to be under as well. So, you know, we need to do it right the first time. And I'm really concerned more about the basics and the technicalities than I am about how pretty it's going to look. Because we don't typically, in fact, in zoning you don't generally control the facing materials and things like that. Okay, our bylaw doesn't address that, except for having really doesn't. Design review committee, okay, which we don't have.
In the bylaw.
But it could be in the bylaw, okay? We could put that in the other use regulations.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, these are things we need to think about as we move forward on this. With that, I'll open it up to the public. This is a public hearing. Identify yourself by name and address, please. If you approach the microphone, so please.
Yes. My name's Neil Schiavelli, I'm 21 Kibbe Road. It's a nice presentation you made, but there's one thing that I'm
If you
lacking.
address the chair, and I'll take
Thank you.
questions.
It's a nice presentation that the fellow made, but it's lacking one thing that I don't quite understand, is that it probably doesn't affect this committee, that's why, but I'm wondering the price range as far as ownership, and you mentioned apartments, how much price range that would be in, because that has a lot to do with the demographics of the town itself at this point.
Yeah, we are on the higher end of the price range. So an apartment, 1-bedroom apartment would be $1,500 to $2,000 a month. A 2-bedroom apartment is north of that, probably up to $2,500 a month. A condominium would be somewhere in the mid 200,000s for a 2-bedroom condominium, 1,200 square feet, you know, $269. And a townhouse would be, you know, low 4s, 4 1/4. You know, so hopefully something you could sell your single-family home and get into that, or you know, whatever. But we're not cheap. This is not, you know, when I say concierge living, it's not inexpensive housing. It reflects the demographic of East Longmeadow. This is a lovely area.
Good evening, folks. Marilyn Richards, 342 Pinehurst. First of all, as a former planner and a stakeholder in this community, I really appreciate this process. We didn't have that much of an opportunity the first go-around to really get involved in the creation of the bylaw that we worked with, and I'm excited that we can perhaps make some inroads into what would really be good for the town. There are lots of things I'd love to talk about. I don't know where to begin, but the only one thing I want to touch base on this evening has to do with a comment that was just made about luxury, luxury apartments, condos, townhomes. East Longmeadow is a diverse community, and we're made up of a lot of folks in all walks of life. And it would be nice if somehow, and I don't know if it's possible, but if somehow perhaps some of the amenities that are offered in a project like this that drive the price point way up may not be as important as providing good housing for our folks here in East Longmeadow. Now, in the first go-around, I brought up the concern about 600 luxury units and our regional fair share of housing for the state of Massachusetts. And we all know that we need 10% of our housing stock in low to moderate income housing. Now, I'm not suggesting that this be that type of project, but I was just wondering if there was ever a way that we could integrate a different level of affordability so that perhaps more people in town might be able to appreciate this opportunity. I don't know if it's doable. I know our senior housing has integrated affordable opportunities for our seniors. We have market rate, we have low to moderate, or even just not having so many amenities that perhaps the price point could come down a little bit and maybe more East Long Meadow folks could enjoy that. That's a thought, that's all.
Thank you.
It's not a directive.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, Elizabeth Marcin Boucher, 138 Keys Road. Part of my concern, as you're writing the bylaw, is the presentations that have been shown. Both of these properties, Cherry Hill is right near Philadelphia, and both towns are about an hour and 40-minute commute by train to New York City. We are about 3 hours commute by train to New York City, and a couple hours we don't even have a train to Boston. So I'm feeling a whole apples to apples kind of thing. Cherry Hill has 70,000 residents, although Somerville is closer to what we have. I think that we really need to see that. And when you hear $2.8 million revenue to the town, what is that, annually, over 12 years, over 10 years?
That's annual.
Annual. And I mean, I think we need to see some hard numbers on that, because with a project of this extent, there is going to be, as you know, increased traffic. I mean, you know all about the intersection that's already there. And again, although I'm not representing the school board right now, I am on the school board, and you may feel that children will not be moving into a $400,000 2 or 3 bedroom townhouse. They may not, but the fair share for low income, unless that's going to have an impact, and that's something that needs to be thought about. And I'm not saying I don't want to see something like this come in, but I don't think some of those high-name steakhouses are going to run into East Long Meadow to try to sear a steak and serve it to us, because I just don't know if the people that we have around us would have any need for that. So it's a great idea. I want to see something happen to that property. Something does need to happen. I don't want to see more than 2 stories, because I don't think that that's what we're about. And I also have a concern that as far as we have many buildings in town that have space within them already. So if we're looking to fill up a restaurant space, or we're looking to fill up a medical building, or we're looking to fill up retail space, we already have all of that. And how is that going to impact the buildings we already have in town? So those were just my thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Of course.
Well, thank you, George. Ralph Page, 306 Prospect Street. Mine is more, I'm curious if the applicant is going to write mixed-use district bylaw and submit it as what they're submitting?
No.
Or if this is a planning board issue, that the planning board has decided that they're going to write a description of the mixed-use district.
It's going to be joint, if you will. We will write it in the end, but we need a lot of input from the developer as to, for instance, on uses. What uses do they think are appropriate for something like this? Because, as you know, we've got 6 pages of uses. Everything from doctor's offices to massage parlors to, everything else. And the question would be, which of the uses that we currently have, or the uses that we don't currently have, that would be appropriate here. It's not just enough to say retail, because we've got, as you know, pages and pages of uses that need to be looked at and decide which ones are appropriate for this district. I think the harder one is going to be the dimensions in terms of the density, the setbacks, heights, things like that. That we need to look at really, really carefully to make sure that there's no negative impacts on the neighborhood around it, and that it looks decent from the road and all those kinds of things, which of course these people want. And I've heard a lot of people talk about Chestnut and Shaker. I'm much more concerned about Chestnut and Benton, because if these people are going to Hartford or Springfield to work, that's where the impact's going to be. And even with the new lights, it's a disaster right now.
So, just out of curiosity, what happens if the planning board comes up with a description for a mixed-use district, and at the last second, the developer doesn't like it? Then we have a mixed-use district bylaw and no property to attach it to?
Well, again, the planning board is not the final say on this, okay? If we come up with something that we think is appropriate for the town, and the developer says, no, we can't work with that, then when it goes to the selectmen, it can be withdrawn, okay?
Town council.
Town council, you know what I mean. My apologies to the councilors in the room.
And I guess that's part of my point here, is it would be the planning board that would be withdrawing it.
No, not necessarily.
Well, it would have to be if the planning board is the one submitting it.
We submit it to the council, and then if the developer says, I can't live with that, the council can either reject it, okay, send it back, or the developer can walk and the council doesn't pass it, okay? I mean, this is a long process.
Just for
with checks and
clarification,
balances.
I agree,
Yeah.
and I think it's a great process, and like I said, I love the idea of a mixed-use district. I think the location that they had talked about is a good location for it. The little nuances of it are something that really has to be worked out, and I think knowing that our planning board is going to be in charge of creating the mixed-use zone, rather than someone coming in and saying, hey, we want to put this in, goes a long ways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, the devil is in the details.
Absolutely.
Quick thing. Perhaps the developer has a development that is 3 hours away from a major city. That maybe we could compare it to, if there's anything out there, might be a little bit more along the lines of what would work with us, because I know we have Hartford, we have Springfield, maybe cities like that nearby, but like away from the major, you know, the Boston or the New York, to kind of give us a feel that it would work near us.
Well, it'd be good if they could find either one of their own or somebody else's.
Yeah, that'd
Would
be
be the thing
appreciated.
to hear about. Anyone else? Sir?
Don Anderson, 26 Skyline Drive, and just disclosure, I'm a member of the town council. I just want to reiterate the point that Ms. Richards mentioned earlier. My big concern is Chapter 40B, okay? I want to make sure, and just for those who aren't aware, that's the comprehensive permit statute, that if we don't have 10% affordable housing, I didn't say low income, I said affordable housing as determined, a petitioner can come in through the state and force a project. Now, there was a similar project in New Jersey, and he mentioned Morris Plains. $100 million project, $100 million project here. 800 units requested, 500 allowed. Here, 800 units in the previous go-around, 640 allowed, at least at this stage. Then, correct me if I'm wrong, they went to the state because it created, in the New Jersey equivalent, a violation of the town's affordable housing, and were able to go in and petition, I'm not sure what the status is, another 200 units. I think we should be proactive. We do need affordable housing. We're presently at about 7%. And if this comes in by its own admission, is a high-end project, we would not be in a good position to argue with the state that, you know, we did not knowingly go into and reduce the number from 7% to 2 or 1 or whatever the number is. What I mentioned to council at the last town council meeting for the petitioner, I would like to make every effort to make a project of this magnitude 40B neutral. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So I want to ask a question of Mr. Anderson, if I could.
Please.
So, are you in favor of this project having more affordable housing, or less, or not have affordable housing?
There's ways to have affordable housing without adversely impacting our school system. In the previous go-around, we talked about...
That's really not my question.
No.
My question is,
my
yes
position,
affordable housing, no affordable housing?
My answer is yes, if we can focus on affordable housing for the silver wave he's speaking of. That's not going to impact our school system.
So for the elderly crowd.
I would say that would be a fair statement. Again, I'm speaking as one
Okay.
member.
Okay.
I'll
Thank you.
defer for the
Thank you.
process.
Thank you.
Ms. Richards?
I just have some information here based on what Mr. Anderson was just talking about. I reached out to the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission back when we were discussing the first project to see where East Long Meadow was at. We have, our requirement by the state is a 10% of our housing stock for our regional fair share. At that time, now this is based on the 2010 census, but in the 2010 census, we had 6,072 housing units in our town. Of that, 445 were subsidized. That was about 7.3% of our housing was low to moderate affordable. We haven't added any since then, according to their records, and I don't believe we have. The 2020 census will give us new numbers, and the feeling is that without having added anything, that we would be down to about 3% of our required 10%. So there is a need for the town to think about taking some sort of initiative to acquire some more affordable, more appropriately priced housing for our younger families that want to stay in East Long Meadow and our older families that don't want to leave. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address? Hearing none, this hearing is going to be continued over probably several months as we work through this. So there's plenty of time to provide your input and to hear more of this. I would encourage anyone who feels strongly on this to, if you have specific thoughts, email us or send us a letter via Ms. Broaders, the planning office, so that we have your thoughts in writing and we don't forget them. Okay, I think that's important. And as I say, we will be hearing from the public again as we go forward. Every time we continue the hearing, at the continuance, we will have time for people to speak. So don't feel that tonight's your last chance to say anything. Doing that, take it back to the board. Any additional questions at this point?
I just have two questions. So the last time you were in, the concept was 50,000 square feet of commercial space.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Fitzgerald, what's the amount of square footage at Center Square Grill, or I mean at the Center Square for retail?
So I'm thinking 30,000 at the most.
The entire complex,
probably,
30,000?
Maybe a little more, counting Rockies, maybe a little more.
Okay. And just to put the apartment price into perspective, if you go along Maple Street in Long Meadow, if you look to your left as you're going toward Enfield, you'll notice the apartments that are being built right behind everyone's backyard in Enfield. Those apartments are going for $1,500 to $2,000, and they are snapped up just like that. So there is a market for that type of cost or affordability for an apartment. But that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would add that the Fields at Chestnut development, those townhouses are going for like $500,000. And the Elms condominiums, which have been around for a long time, are typically selling in what, 300,000, 350?
Around 350, closer to 4.
Yeah, and that's a development that's been there for what, 20 years now?
Yep.
Okay, so these are not brand new units. So there is market, we know that. Okay, I think the concerns about the affordable ratio are valid, and it's something that we need to consider. Whether we deal with it explicitly in this bylaw or not remains to be seen. Now, a motion to continue the public hearing to December, is it the 4th? At December 4th at 6 p.m. So moved. Is that the second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Could I just recommend that we set aside a set period of time, let's say from 6 to 7, so that people can adjust their schedules and not sit here for an hour in between, or
Sure.
Something like that. So
What we can do is schedule the next continuation at 7. Okay, so that,
try to get everything done before that.
So the 4th at 7?
yep.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What would you, for the 4th, what would you, how far along would you expect us to be in terms of?
Well, I'd like to see your table of uses, okay? You know what our table of uses looks like?
Yeah.
We'd like to see which of those uses you would want to include in your concept. And again, I don't know whether you can get an audience with the fire chief between now and then, but you know, some statement at some point from the fire department as to what heights and so on they can handle.
Joe Conley, who you've met,
Yeah.
Joe's a volunteer firefighter.
Okay.
They have a secret handshake or something.
Yeah.
They'll figure it out.
Okay, fine. I mean, that's the start. And
So table of uses proposed, our proposed.
there's proposed
Dimensions.
tables. Yeah, and again,
You want density too?
we'd like to see density, yeah.
And I think you'd want to take into consideration the comments you heard from the town council
Yeah.
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah,
So,
that's a start, okay?
Okay.
Good,
thanks.
okay.
But before they leave, do you think that we should kind of give them a guideline on what height we,
Let's
all right.
let's deal with that later.
Thank you.
I think they've heard town council last time around loud and clear that 5 stories was not going to
If
be.
anyone would like the pictures from the slides, I'd be happy to give you mine, so.
Okay. John, you want to read the
Spare
notice
Thanksgiving.
on the next one?
All right, the next public hearing is in regards to the rear of Pease Road. The petition by applicant to consider a zoning change at rear Pease Road, 21.25 acres from residence AA to industrial, 1 industrial garden park zoning district. Applicant's agent is attorney James Martin, Robinson Donovan at 1500 Main Street, Springfield.
We'll just try to give them a little clearance here. Okay. Videographer suggested we sit at the table.
That would be good.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. If you could introduce yourselves again.
Yes. I'm Jim Martin. I'm an attorney at Robinson Donovan in Springfield, and I represent ECOS, the petitioner here tonight. This is Brad Wilson. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hello, Brad Wilson, project developer for Ecos Energy.
So, tell us, again, tonight, we're dealing only with the request for a zone change.
That's right.
We're not looking at the specific site proposal. For the site plan, although we want to hear your concepts, but we're dealing specifically with the request for zone change.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's important for everyone to understand that the process was that we filed a request for a zone change with the town. The process requires that we go to the town council first and ask that the town council refer this to the planning board for what the law calls a recommendation. And the planning board hears factors with regard to the request, makes a recommendation. Hopefully, if it's a positive recommendation, it then goes back to the town council for a vote as to whether or not to approve the zone change. If the planning board is neutral or negative, it still goes back to the town council at the decision of the applicant, and the town council can take up the matter should it see so fit. So what we're here tonight is to address the zoning change, but in order to do that, you have to have some sense and flavor of the project itself and understand why we think that a zone change is recommended, should be recommended in this case. I think I've been doing things here in town for long enough and been before you long enough to know that they say in Washington that the third rail is Social Security. And they say in East Long Meadow the third rail is zone changes. Harken back to making the zone changes for the Davis family back to convert property from residential to industrial so that they can expand their factory through the prior town meeting process. So we're sensitive to that, but we think that this is an important this is an important project for the town. I mean, we're talking about renewable energy here, and the town has dedicated a fair amount of its recent changes to bylaws to encourage solar development and solar placement so that it can produce renewable energy within the town. And so I'm going to let Brad here gave you a summary of the project, and then I'll address the legal issues with regard to the zone change. Is that acceptable, Mr. Chairman?
Sounds good.
Excellent, and I'll try to be mindful of time. Again, as Jim mentioned, we're here to talk about the zone change, but I think it's important to have some context as to the type of project that such a zone change would enable, and that is this proposed East Long Meadow Solar Project. I think it's also important for this particular petition to understand the particular unique characteristics of this parcel in particular, because I think that is important. So very quickly, this project is a ground-mounted solar energy generation facility. So solar panels, the same types you see on rooftops of homes and businesses, just mounted on the ground. This is a large-scale array, 4 megawatts in generating capacity, which would create the amount of renewable energy to offset the power usage of approximately 800 to 1,000 Massachusetts homes annually. This type of project sells power directly to the utility and has a useful life of approximately 25 to 40 years. The particular parcel in question is located here in town and is 21.26 acres. This parcel that we're talking about, the location of the project is important. It's privately owned by us. We own the parcel. Historically, it had been used for a form of orchard agriculture, but is not used that way today. It's gone fallow, it's not maintained, but it is undeveloped. There are no structures of any kind on that property. But very importantly, the parcel is landlocked entirely. There is no frontage in East Long Meadow. It is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet to the closest public road, and it is surrounded on all sides in East Long Meadow by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet of utility-owned dense forest. Just going quickly through the next few pages, project location map. We have an aerial photo of the parcel in question. You can see the remnants of the agricultural activity that happened there, and you can also see the wider context of exactly just how isolated this parcel is from any other form of development in town.
Okay, just ask a question before I lose my train of thought. So it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet, but how many parcels is it away from the next?
There's a parcel map on the next page.
Okay. Cool.
I'm sorry, the next second page. We have a closer aerial and then a parcel map. You can see our parcel. We have within the town 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parcels
That's surrounding.
that are, I'm sorry, 4 parcels that are adjacent. 3 of those are owned by Eversource. The one that has the smallest amount of adjacent property line to us is owned by a private LLC.
This one right here.
No, this one here is owned by a private LLC.
Okay.
The others are all owned by the utility.
This one is also owned privately.
That is, but it's not adjoining to ours.
Right.
It's in the area for sure, though.
So that brings your hundreds down a little bit then. Because if you're really talking this here, this is owned by a private entity.
Correct.
Okay. So what is on that parcel right there?
It's undeveloped, at least for hundreds and hundreds of feet. If we go back to the aerial.
So what's that zone?
This is all double A. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
But even then, that's 400 feet to that property.
Thank you.
The next few pages we can go through very quickly. Some photos just to give you context of what this type of project physically looks like. And we don't need to spend any particular time unless you have questions, showing the racking system.
What's the height of the racks? Panels?
These would be 8 feet or so to the highest point off the ground, 8 to 9 feet. We draw the ballast mounting system. This is not the system that's installed subsurface. This is concrete buckets that sit on top of the soil, so there's no subsurface installation taking place. Equipment pads, perimeter fencing, gravel driveway, all very common for a facility of this nature. And then just some photos of some of the projects that similar to this type of project that we have developed. Coming to a draft site plan for how this project would lay out on this particular piece of land. Again, I'm not going to spend time going into too much detail. I know the particulars of the site plan are not what we're here to talk about tonight. That is the idea of how that parcel could be used. The page following answers the question of site access. Because there is no frontage in East Long Meadow, and it's not possible to get access easement over utility-owned land, we actually own the parcel as well, directly to the south in Summers. And that is how access for a development on this parcel would be obtained.
That site is already fully permitted for solar in Summers.
Yes. In fact, if you look at the following page, it's a site plan showing both of those parcels. The project that has been permitted and approved and will be built next spring in Summers. And then the draft concept for the parcel in East Long Meadow to the north. And there you see an access driveway coming off of Bilton Road in Summers, going up through that parcel and into the East Long Meadow parcel. Jim spoke earlier about the benefits of this type of project, the meeting of the renewable energy goals of both the locality, the state, the environmental benefits provided by renewable generation. It would create a productive use on land that's currently marginal at very, very, very low impact. Due to, on this particular parcel, due to the location and the nature of the surrounding properties, it would be completely undetected by anyone. No one has any idea it was there. It would not be visible, audible. It doesn't create any waste, any emissions. It would be completely isolated and completely occluded from the public. Also has extremely low burden on city services while creating additional tax revenue because of the project for the town.
Let me ask you about that.
Sure.
I've spoken with our assessor, our director of assessing, I should say.
Okay.
And she's informed me that, at least in Massachusetts, the actual solar equipment is not taxed. And there are court cases currently that look like it's going to hold that up. And so the only tax on the land would be on the land as undeveloped land.
I'm certainly not familiar of...
I think I can address some of that.
Okay.
There is an ATB, not a court case, in which there has been a single decision saying that the solar or panels are not to be taxed as equipment because they generate utilities. There are other cases that have said to the contrary. So that is a subject to litigation. I've done many, many solar projects, and every one has resulted in there is also a real estate tax, so the question then becomes, what's the value? And you have the cost, so it's not insignificant, as a comparable sales approach, or you have the income approach as to what the income produces from the property, just as a building. So there are alternate ways beside the, what we call the, the non-income deriving, which is basically if you had your office, you had a computer there, you'd fill out a form and say, this is my incidental tax equipment. And most communities do tax that, and most communities around here pay. I don't know what your solar array does for your tax here now, but...
Well, the one that is not being taxed, in part because it hasn't actually started yet. Even though the equipment is there, the equipment is not being taxed. It's being taxed on the basis of the sales price of the land. And I would assume that this one would be assessed similarly.
To begin with, right.
To begin with. So I just want to make clear that there may not be a huge tax benefit to the town from this project.
Well, there may not be, but there may be, because, I would say 99% of the solar arrays that I've worked on are paying a significant amount of tax.
In Massachusetts?
In Massachusetts.
We have a 3 megawatt project in Spencer,
Okay.
and we are paying a significant amount of taxes every year on that project.
And I just finished one in Blandford, small town of Blandford, and they're paying a significant amount of taxes. In Belchertown, in Amherst, I mean, I can go on with the projects.
All I can tell you is my director of assessing, Diane.
Well, I know Diane, and I know
Yeah.
what she's referring to, but
Yeah.
that's an ATB decision from a single panel.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess it's like a Superior Court case at this stage.
Okay.
And it was much ballyhooed about.
Yeah.
But that's not the actual practice, I can tell you that. But in any event, the price they paid is more than it was when it was agricultural 61A land that was generating nothing.
Okay, I just want to make clear that we're uncertain about the tax benefits, let's put it that way.
We know there will be an increase in tax benefits. How much is the question?
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was getting very close to the end, so I think that was a good point to bring up the question. You know, going from the benefits to the impacts, you know, talking about how, you know, to neighboring development, there will be no impact from this project, but also city, town services. Very, very, very low impact from this development. It is kind of, you install it, you take care of it from time to time, and it just kind of sits there quietly and does its job. I think that's really all I mean, please, your questions are greatly appreciated, but in the interest of time, I can talk about these projects for hours, and I don't want to do that tonight.
I watched your presentation on the October 30th meeting, so I thought you did a good job presenting.
So let me address the zone change for a second. So your bylaw, section 7.5.1, starts out by saying that you created this bylaw for the purpose of, to promote the creation of new ground-mounted solar voltaic installations, right? And in your bylaw, you say they are permitted in table 3.1, under 3.041, in industrial and industrial garden use only.
Right.
So you have to be in that zone
Right.
in order to operate a solar array, all right? And in this particular situation, and looking at the creation of this is now, we're looking to change it to that district so that we can operate. And when you go through and look at a zone change, you look at, okay, what's the purpose of the zone change? How does it benefit the community, and does it harm anyone, okay? Here, there often a cry like, well, if we change this to industrial, then what if they put a smelting plant there or something like that? Well, your industrial restrictions in your bylaws are probably one of the longest sections in the bylaws. And they start at the front and they go back from A to double C. And you can't put any of those things in there, okay? So the second thing is that in terms of the benefit to this is that the only access is from Summers from this project that they own. And the only reason it hasn't been built, although it's fully permitted and ready to go, is that if they build that project, then they can't get to the East Long Meadow property to build the East Long Meadow project because they will box themselves out in terms of construction. So not only is the protection of the zone and the property the fact that there's going to be a solar array put there, but no one else is going to be able to get to it unless they go through their property. So there is a protection. And thirdly is that this is a natural site for this because the power companies run all sorts of transmission lines through there, and that land is primarily owned by Eversource. And Eversource obviously is very supportive of this. You can tie in right there, and unless you can, you know, we can't see that far into the future, that Eversource is always going to say, well, East Long Meadow doesn't need electricity anymore, so we're going to take all those transmission lines down, or we're going to find a different way to get you the power, even if it was underground or sideways. They still have to control the land, and they're not going to let anyone put up a building on it or something that's going to obstruct this. So in terms of the concern over something happening around this, as long as Eversource controls this property, which it has and its predecessors for many years, it's a utility corridor. So it's consistent with the use. It promotes and meets the Commonwealth's and the town of East Long Meadow's stated goal to do this, and would comply with the fact that this is the only zones you can put it in. You can't put it in other areas. And often you'll hear, well, you know, you're going to be cutting down all these trees. Well, before they bought it, the owners were smart enough to forest deforest the land to take the wood. So we don't even, and now, although it's fallow and it's gonna have to be leveled out, it's not gonna require, you know, and get into that argument of greenhouse loss and offset of carbons, because the trees are gone, essentially. I mean, there's still trees around it, and they plan to keep those trees. There's an interesting, I think, observation we made from the address. It's 0 rear Pease Road. It's way back there. No one from Pease Road is going to be able to see this. No one's going to be able to see it from Summers because of the project in front of it. So it doesn't impact the health, safety, or welfare of the citizens. Zone changes are allowed under Massachusetts law. There's plenty of cases, plenty of decisions, and plenty of good policy reasons to make a zone change. This would not be spot zoning, in my opinion, and I'm happy to address that if people want to go there. There is, because of the uses around it, and the town can make an isolated parcel, particularly given this size, 25 acres, a specific zone if it meets a town's goal. That's the case law. Here, the purpose of this bylaw is to promote the creation of photovoltaic power. You have one off of across from the field club that you can't see either, and this would be the second one. Trying to meet your stated goal is legal and makes sense. This project, I want to point out, if you support the zone change and we go to the town council and they support it, has to come back for site design review to you for every aspect of it. And you have very detailed requirements to present on the plans and drawings that the applicant has to do and meet and satisfy you. And at that point, you have another opportunity to really, you know, drill down into the specifics of this. So we feel very strongly that this is a supportive of the zoning bylaws, that this zone change should be endorsed, and we hope you will agree.
John?
I'm sorry, before we keep going, could we take just a brief 5-minute break?
Sure.
Okay.
Did we just adjourn?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No,
Yeah.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay, let's get back in session. Take it to the board. John, do you have any questions at this point?
No, I think obviously I was talking to some people before this, and I think it's important to remember that this is simply for the zone change, and then we're going to be coming back. And if this does in fact move forward, there would be a separate site plan. I think a lot of good information has been shown so far that I think the board would need that's necessary. And I still am sort of considering the available options.
Lou, any questions?
No, I don't, but I hope that there's some abutters or residents around the area that would say something, so I'd rather see it go from...
No, I just can't let it pass. So the existing solar array in East Long Meadow on the Long Meadow line, the closest residence is probably a half-mile away into Long Meadow, or you have to go down Benton for at least another half a mile. And it's in an existing industrial zone. This is actually creating a new industrial zone. So there is a difference with respect to all of that. And I do have concern on what is the potential viability of developing of those two residentially zoned lots right there. So that's all. But I'd love to hear more.
Sure.
So,
I just want to point out, from my own point of view, first of all, this is not consistent with the master plan at all. We have two industrial zones. Industrial Garden Park, which was specifically carved out of the southwest quarter of the town to locate industry there. Okay, and that was done in the 70s, and I believe it was the 70s. And the idea was to concentrate industrial efforts there, but do it as Industrial Garden Park. The existing industrial zone basically is either side of the old railroad. And that was made industrial because when the railroad went through, you could have industries there because it provided the transportation. And if you look, our industrial buildings the major ones are adjacent to that railroad, that ex-railroad. So I also point out that I was one of the ones who wrote the solar bylaw. I was on the board at the time, and we worked through that extensively. And the idea was that at that time we considered solar arrays to be an industrial use. And therefore it ought to be in Industrial Garden Park, where we have, and still have, open land. Quite a bit of it, actually. And that would be a more appropriate place to put it than in a residential area. So that was why we wrote the bylaw the way we did. I would also point out that the zone change would have to be to industrial, because in Industrial Garden Park, you have to have frontage to have a solar array, and you don't have frontage here.
We do not have frontage. I was looking for that, Mr. Chairman.
That's in the table of dimensions. I believe it's in the table of dimensions. If it's not there, then it's in that section.
Well, there's no dispute we don't have any frontage.
Yeah.
But
I remember looking specifically for that and seeing that.
Yeah, you mentioned it at the informal meeting, and I
Yeah.
looked for it, I didn't see it, but I could have missed it.
It is in there, I know that. I'm not sure where, it's probably under the solar bylaw. But in any case, industrial is our most lenient zone, and you can do more in that zone than any place else. And irrespective of your intentions, that will always, if we change it, it will always be industrial. And if after 25 years, you find that the unit is no longer viable and you take it out, it's still industrial. And that's a concern of mine. I just point that out as my concerns right now. Now, at this point, I'll open up to the public. Marilyn.
Good evening, folks. Marilyn Richards, 342 Pinehurst. There's lots to talk about with this particular application, and so instead of trying to pull it all together in my head, I decided to put it in writing. I'd like to read a statement into the record, and then you can have it for your files. And I'm just highlighting some of the points that I'm concerned about. George bringing up the issue of frontage, I just saw that it's 250 feet of frontage for an industrial garden park parcel. This document is dated November 20th, 2018. Dear Planning Board members, while it is important to debate the merits and concerns of solar technology, the issue at hand this evening is a zone change. Care must be taken with any zone change, as the town needs to be willing to accept any use that can occur within that zone once that zone change takes place. When considering such a zone change, there is never a guarantee that the proposed use will occur as promised, or that the business will not fail, or that the current technology will not change. In any of those scenarios, the town could be left with a spot zone in the midst of the residential zone. With this zone change, the town could have an industrial garden park zone in the midst of the town's AA residential property, a zone with all industrial and manufacturing uses that are currently permitted. How fair would such a zone change be to the surrounding residential land, to the landowners who bought residential land, knowing that their neighbors would also be residential in use? This would almost be like creating a Baldwin Street type issue, similar to the one recently dealt with by the Planning Board, when residents objected to the development of lawfully zoned industrial land, which happened to abut their residential property. We heard talk of buyer beware. A zone change such as this could potentially create a similar situation such as that. While I do not live near this proposed zone change, the entire package of East Long Meadow is why we chose to move here. We have come to expect and enjoy the quality of life offered within our town, and that makes our town worth fighting for. Our zoning laws are in place for a reason. The balance is key. The town offers the option for commercial solar projects in the industrial and industrial garden park zones, and there is a large project already in place on Denslow Road. Residents can choose to put solar on their rooftops or carports as they see fit. These options offer direct benefits to the homeowner. Back in May of 2011, the Planning Board sponsored 3 articles for ground mount photovoltaic arrays at the annual town meeting. One of the articles provided that the table of uses would permit solar farms in all zones throughout the town, with the exception of the 2 condominium zones. The public hearing held prior to the town meeting for this bylaw change produced such opposition that the Planning Board withdrew all 3 articles and no action was taken. The following year, a similar article for commercial ground mount photovoltaic arrays was proposed, this time designating both of our industrial zones as suitable locations. The vote was overwhelmingly in favor. The residents chose to protect our forests, our open space, and our farmland. Our close neighbor, the town of Hamden, is now wishing they had done the same. After a number of recent solar farm developments, and several still waiting for approval, Hamden secured a moratorium on such projects in order to fashion a suitable bylaw similar to ours for their town. We all should recognize that there are merits, both in renewable energy and a balance of zoning uses for our town. I believe that East Long Meadow has successfully accomplished both. The people in our town have spoken. Please honor our bylaw and say no to this zone change. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to ask any questions or address the board? Please.
Elizabeth Marcy, Boucher, 138 Pease Road. Although my property is on the other side of Pease Road, I feel when I went and I purchased my property back in the day, I thought about the area I was going to move in. I've said this before for last time. I'm one of these people now that gets up at the mic. And I thought about where I purchased my property, and I thought about the town I purchased my property in, and I have sat through the painful town meetings that we used to have. And I won't, not as eloquent as Marilyn, but the reason the people want it in the industrial zone, it's not because they don't want solar. It's because they don't, you know, we don't know what the long term is. We don't want to look at these things. I mean, I have residential slash, I think, farmland behind me, and although it's a development, but there's not a lot of homes in that development, what could happen to the lot behind me? When I started, there was sheep grazing. I want the sheep there. They're not there anymore. I understand that. But this is what I purchased into at the time. I didn't purchase a home, say, on Benton, where I knew this might have been a reality. The people back in 2012, their intent when they voted to put these arrays in the industrial park was so that we do not dot our land with this. These are wonderful things. Nobody is denying that. But we really do need to think about it. It is spot zoning, and there's a great piece of property on Chestnut Street. They'd look great on. Thank you.
Ralph Page, 306 Prospect Street. I'm reading the legal notice, and from what it says here is they're asking for a zone change to industrial garden park, which is an industrial use. If that's correct, obviously they don't have the frontage to do what they want. For that reason alone, I would ask the board to deny it. With that being said, I would consider this spot zoning. I've done some research on spot zoning. You are allowed, like the attorney said, to take a single parcel and change it to a different zone if it meets the community's plan. Under the open space and rec plan, the latest one that was done, not the one that's being redone, one of the main concerns we had was the property south of Pease Road should be maintained as open space. The town should look to purchase this. Under our community development plan, which I have a copy, the same thing was said. We should look to this property as open space in the town. We already have an industrial garden park district. We already have an industrial district. If they want a solar array, look for a parcel within that and take care of it. My other concern is if we allow this to go forwards, as they said, the electric company, Eversource, owns 2 parcels next to it. What's to stop them from saying, well, this here is now industrial garden park, we're only gonna put up a solar array next to it, and now all of a sudden you have 3 times the size as what you would. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board? Please.
Hi, my name is Melissa Welsh. I live on 42 Capri Drive, which is off of Prospect Street. And I just wanted to stand before you and say that I agree with the comments that the other people made. I believe we weren't privy to see the maps that you were looking at, but I think you can see my lot on that map. And I'm very concerned that that star is going to expand and take up my backyard with, you know, where my 2 children live and my neighbor's children are as well. And we moved to East Longmeadow. My husband grew up in town. I grew up in Hamden. We on purpose moved to East Longmeadow and this part of East Longmeadow because of its pastoral beauty and its proximity to shops and schools and other places we wanted to be. But we love driving down Prospect and seeing it the way it's been for many, many years. And as much as I believe in solar, I think that it would be detrimental to the development of our community to have a solar farm in that space, which doesn't seem to provide a lot of benefit to the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Krista Jordan. I live at 39 Capri Drive, also in the same neighborhood as Melissa, off of Prospect Street. Thank you to Marilyn and Ralph, who provided some historical context to kind of like the zoning issues with regards to commercial solar in town. I was very pleased when I started doing my research that our town had very thoughtful, well-crafted bylaws that address commercial solar. I also drafted kind of a lengthy thing to read to you. I'm not going to read the entire thing because I think a lot of my concerns have been addressed by Marilyn. But approximately 5 years ago, my husband and I decided to construct a home in the Bella Vista neighborhood off of Prospect Street as you approach the Connecticut border. One of the things that appealed to us about the neighborhood was the picturesque view of the valley and the rural nature of the development. My husband and I not only went to the town offices to view the subdivision's plan and topography, but also to view the surrounding parcels. We are old enough to have known many people whose wooded lot behind their property was developed into condominium units or medical office buildings. We wanted to be assured that would not happen behind Bella Vista. Upon viewing the assessor's maps, we felt confident that the residentially zoned large parcels would not meet that fate. We felt confident that any construction on that land would be similar to that in our development of single-family homes. This solar project is located on an interesting piece of land. It is locked in by other large residentially zoned parcels. Eversource owns 2 of the parcels that are between the proposed project and the backyards of Bella Vista. Together, those 2 parcels total a little more than 51 acres. The parcels to the north of the proposed project are owned by John Pearson and Redstone Farms and Barns, care of John Pearson. Of those 2, the parcel off of Pease Road that abuts the rear portion of Autumn Ridge is 45 acres, and the parcel off of Pease that abuts the rear portion of Hallen Estates is 59 acres. Eversource also owns 2 parcels to the west of the proposed project that extend down to Shaker Road. Those 2 residentially zoned parcels together total 53.3 acres. To be honest, I do not understand the logic that if approved, this would not constitute spot zoning. I'm gonna skip over the part that explains spot zoning because I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir with that. If approved, I fear a slippery slope of zoning change that could be legally challenged by all the aforementioned surrounding large property owners. Eversource would likely have legal ground to place ground-mounted solar on all 100-plus acres. I also foresee large out-of-state commercial solar developers like Ecos Energy approaching the other owners for land acquisition, or for that matter, approaching any other owner of large residentially zoned parcels in our town, of which there are many, and buying them out to place solar farms on their property. As such, I urge the planning board to very thoughtfully reflect on this proposed project. I think it is your duty to protect all the rights of the property owners in town, including the rights of owners of industrially zoned parcels. They too have purchased property with the expectation that commercial solar would be one of the many legal uses for their property. Given that, such an approved use helps support their property values. Please note that I am not inherently against solar. Rooftop solar is a good option for our town to support renewable energy goals, as evidenced by the Tiger Press rooftop 653 kilowatt solar array that was recently installed. Our town also has the ground-mounted 6.4 megawatt solar array being constructed by Eversource. However, I believe strongly that commercial solar should be done the right way. Letting predatory developers buy up residentially zoned land cheaply to put in large-scale solar arrays is not the proper way to do this. Major power plants do not belong in residential neighborhoods. I know this company will argue that our town's zoning bylaws are inconsistent with the Massachusetts state statutes regulating ground-mounted solar arrays. However, the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources interpreted the law and issued a document entitled Policy Guidance for Regulating Solar Energy Systems. In that document, it states that, quote, the Department of Energy Resources believes it is prudent for communities to allow large-scale ground-mounted solar energy systems somewhere in the community, and that a higher degree of municipal control over the location and permitting of such systems may not be inconsistent with the Chapter 40A, Section 3 mandate that regulations be reasonable and necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare. While East Longmeadow has restricted large-scale ground-mounted solar arrays to the industrial zone, there is no doubt that East Longmeadow has generously allowed ground-mounted solar arrays to be placed in our community without particularly onerous restrictions. Please seriously consider the concerns of town residents such as myself in your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishes to?
I need copies of those written
Excuse me.
comments.
Oh, Krista, they need a copy of that.
Oh, copy of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great.
Likewise, Marilyn? She has it. Have it? Oh, perfect.
That way we don't have to.
Do you want my seat?
I know, it doesn't have mine. Oh, gosh.
That's why we don't have to transcribe it from the tape. Then would anyone else in the public like to address the issue at this point, without going over the same issues again and again? I mean, if your point's already been made, just say you support it. If you have something new to say, please do.
That's exactly why I came up, George.
Please identify yourself.
I was addressing what you said. I didn't want to miss your point, George. Okay. My name is John O'Rourke, 16 Autumn Ridge. My wife and I have lived in town for 12 years. We love this town, and we love the way it's comprised. I know that there was a lot of work done on the solar array rules and regulations the town passed. And I support everything that everyone has said before me, the town residents that have spoken. So thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you this evening.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, I'll take it back to the board. Any additional questions or comments?
I just have two comments. So I want to thank Marilyn for the history lesson on the solar array bylaws. I mean, 6 years ago is a very short period of time.
I'm the last dinosaur.
In the scheme of things. Yeah. But having been a regular attendee for 16 years, or well, for 14 years at town meetings, I do recall that, and I do recall the initial efforts being withdrawn by the planning board to that. So 6 years is a very short period of time. And just to be consistent, I mean, we, at the prior hearing, we were all four of us specifically said, what if? So what if you put in that development on Chestnut Street and it fails? So what is left? And what do we do after that period of time? And so I think we're really kind of left with the same thought process here. So in 25 years, if the units are no longer working and you pull them out, what has happened to the surrounding properties during that period of time? And so that is something that kind of just is pulling at me right now. So,
For the record, I'd like to point out two things. One, there's a single power line going across there right now, not many power lines. There is also a gas pipeline that goes through residential neighborhoods as well as through the open space. So, and the single line actually does go through some residential areas, including South End, I think it is. The other thing I want to point out is if you look at the parcel maps, I know the public can't see this really well, but what you'll notice, you keep saying how far away this is from anywhere, but you'll notice Bella Vista creeping in here, Autumn Ridge creeping in here, this one creeping in down here. Slowly from the edges, this whole area is getting developed. And this has all happened within the past 15 years. This area, John Pearson and his family are not going to be farming this forever, okay? If there's solar or industrial zoning here, the value of these parcels for eventual development is going to decline, in my opinion. And I just want to point out that it's not as far as you think from being accessible. And I was under the impression, by the way, that Eversource was trying to actually market those properties a few years ago. Or these properties up here a few years ago. So, you know, we need to understand that Eversource may decide at some point that they really don't need to be in the real estate business. And we don't know, we can't predict what they're going to do, or their successor companies if somebody buys them out. But that's my opinion at this point. Are there any other questions, any more information that people feel they need? Anything else you guys want to add at this point?
Well, yes, I mean, we want to recognize that, you know, any zone change is always a difficult decision and sensitive to anybody who lives in town. So we're not insensitive to that. Sure. We're trying to look at the big picture here. And I have done many of these, as you know, and you've done many of them. And there's always the balance, you know, because you could say 50 years from now, look what would happen. Who thought Packers Machinery was going to go out of business? Or who thought that this medical office building would no longer be vacant because it will become vacant because another one? But, you know, from planning purposes and from our perspective, you can't look 100 years out and guess what's going to happen. You have to make decisions on what's best for the town now. And if, you know, from here, this is a significant distance from the outer edges of this. Now, if these people sell, they have frontage on here. But if this is built, it will be a known factor. And I don't, you know, it's a planning board decision as to whether or not the overall goal of allowing this. This is 24 acres. I don't know the lot sizes as much as you, but in terms of how many 24-acre parcels are available in the industrial area that are sited on a transmission line that will accept the power that is going to allow a solar. So I think it's a little bit unfair to say, well, go someplace else, you know, but we don't have a 24-acre parcel that's right next to power generation that can help the town generate. I don't know if it exists or not.
I'll take a drive down Deer Park Road sometime.
I've driven down Deer Park Road, but I don't know if it is as suitable as this parcel is. So that's. Again, I'm not in the solar business, so I don't know what's suitable and what's not. Right. I do know there are power lines down there, and we do have solar down there. So somebody thought that area was suitable. And there's a big difference between putting solar on your house or building and doing something that's going to, you know, generate, power for 800 or 1,000 homes.
Right, exactly, and that's what we're thinking of.
Yeah. I don't know if you have anything else, Brad.
I would just, point out the location of this, the comments about being able to see it and affect it. And we looked at this parcel because of its isolation, and that's why we're in front of you tonight. With that in mind, we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Anything else from the public?
Move to close the hearing.
Have a motion to close the public hearing. Do you have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Once we close it, we can't take any more testimony. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Do I have any further discussion now along the board? I think we've all stated our thoughts. Do I have a motion to approve the zone change, to recommend the zone change? remember, we do positive motions.
I don't recommend that we,
Well, we need a motion. and
I'll
then
make a
we'll vote on
motion
it.
that we do not
You have to
recommend.
motion in the affirmative.
Make a motion in the affirmative.
Boy, it's 8 o'clock at night, you're really putting me through the test here. I recommend,
Make a motion to recommend.
I'll make a motion to recommend that this zone change not.
No, you can't do
I
that.
reckon, oh, you figure it out, go ahead.
I need a motion to recommend the zone change.
I
And then
make a
we'll vote on
motion
it.
to-
Okay, I'll make a motion to recommend the zone change.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
No. All those in favor, if you vote yes, it means that you want to recommend the zone change to the town council. If you vote no, it means you do not want to recommend it to the town council. Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Nay?
Nay. Nay.
Okay, so we did a roll call.
Okay.
Okay?
So,
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask the board to state in the record the reasons for not recommending it.
Absolutely. The reasons for not recommending it is it's not consistent with the, master plan. It puts an industrial zone in an area that the town has never wanted to have an industrial zone. The intent of the zoning bylaw has always been to keep the industry either along the railroad where it is grandfathered more or less, or in the industrial garden park, which was specifically created to focus industry in one area that would have minimal impact on adjoining residential areas.
Does any other member have any other reason besides what the chairman has stated? Because I
I've
think
I've also heard the opinion of some people that they would consider this to be spot zoning.
I'm trying
Sure.
to comply with the law. Whether
No,
you've
that's
heard
fine.
that or not, that's not in the record, so.
Okay.
But the law would require each person who votes not to endorse something to state their reasons on the
Fine.
record.
It's an inconsistent use with the surrounding residential properties.
Right. And I agree with Russ, it's inconsistent, it's residential use.
I'm not arguing that, I'm just.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I know there was a point raised, I'm not sure if this was definitive, but it was sort of stated in the legal notice that it was an industrial garden park, and I'm not sure if it would have complied.
I think it said industrial.
Yes, so I want to clarify what
Industrial or-
it's
okay.
industrial slash, I think the person who spoke, Ralph, misread the notice, but I know I filled out the application, and it's industrial slash industrial garden, so.
Meaning industrial or industrial.
Right.
Because you can't be both.
Right, industrial or.
By the way, just so you know, in industrial, any approved use, frontage, none. Industrial garden
understand.
park, any
Well-
approved, oops, that's golf. That's a different
Yeah,
subject.
I didn't bring this table, that's why I was
Yeah.
asking for it.
Okay, industrial, it's here, industrial garden park is in here somewhere.
And that's why we tended to go for the industrial, because we
Yeah.
don't have the frontage.
Yeah.
So not to debate it, it doesn't matter to us, there's industrial garden
The
next to it.
industrial garden park frontage is 250 feet.
Yeah.
It's any approved use, so,
Yes, so that's why we,
Yeah, that's
at
what
the
I
informal
came
thing, we said we were going to go.
yeah.
Is there a requirement that we vote to affirm our specific reasons?
No.
I
We
don't think
stated
so.
them, they're in the
They have to
record.
be in the record, because that's the basis for any
Yeah.
appeal, is the record. It's to avoid people just voting no and never saying why, so when there's a de novo review, what was the reason? So I thought it would be for your benefit, frankly, to put your opinions on the record, your basis.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Right here.
Okay, we have another,
Hopefully.
The frontage. That's what I'm looking for, I couldn't find it, George,
there.
it's right there.
we have another public hearing. Which should be simple.
I was just going to
gonna
finish
give
my
you a home
point
tonight?
Yeah.
regarding that. I just
Have a good evening.
felt
Thank you.
also
Have a
that
good evening.
it wasn't necessarily about the physical project.
It's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's,
Yeah.
I don't want to mess you up, but you can't.
C to business.
You think so?
Okay, that's okay.
As long as I saw what the price was, that's all I need to know.
Next hearing.
Yes. The next public hearing is 51 Prospect Street, the petition by applicant to consider a zoning change of 51 Prospect Street, 2/23 of an acre site from Residence C to Business District. Applicant's agent, John F. Soja, Soja Law Office of 2022 Boston Road, Wilbraham, Mass.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for your patience. It was interesting.
In a good way or a bad way?
Good way. My name's John Soja. I maintain an office at 2022 Boston Road in Wilbraham, Mass. And I'm representing the interest of Don and Jerry Socha, doing business as Socha Property Management, LLC. And this has to do with the property located at 51 Prospect Street. And it's a petition to consider a zone change from Residence C to business. And it's an anomaly, to say the least. This property has been constructed as a commercial building for the last almost 40 years. It was put up in 1979, I understand, by Fred and Edna Stevens. It was used as their real estate sales office in combination with, I think, 3 other businesses. My people bought it in 2004, and at that time it had 4 business tenants. There was a Tree Corp, a landscaper in the basement. There was Cabello's Hair Shop, which might still be there, I'm not even sure. It had an engineering firm, and it had a rehabilitation business for handicapped individuals. And since 2004, when my folks bought it, it's always been used as a business site. There obviously was a building permit that had to be issued for construction of the building. There have been sign permits issued since by the town for tenants. Each unit has a separate electric supply. That's the way it was built, and it's heated by electric heat. And that's the purpose for coming before you, to see if we can straighten out the anomaly.
And as he points out, this is something that's been in business use forever. It adjoins a business zone. So we're not spot zoning because we're increasing the zone. We're not enabling something new to go in there that wasn't there already. Okay, so we're not increasing the impact on the neighbors. We're just trying to make right something that, however it occurred, every time a business changes hands there, it causes us problems because it's, we're basically granting a waiver to the zone, which we shouldn't be doing. So that's why this is before us. Do you have any questions for the gentleman? Anyone from the public wishes to speak to this?
Ralph appointed me to speak. Back in 1979, the parcel was subdivided for Mr. Fred Stevens' real estate office. Prior to that, as you said, it was one single parcel and had frontage both on Shaker and Prospect. And while the town has never kept record of pre-existing non-conforming uses, the understanding is that perhaps at one time there was a use that expanded that lot, from front to back and crossed over on the residential piece, if you will. It's always been Fred Stevens' real estate agency when we came to town, and then after that, as a former planning board member, we changed, we took lots of new signs and new occupants for that same location, and they were all business uses. I think this is a good fix to change this zone, so I would support changing it to a business zone.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the board?
Larry Levine, 115 Canterbury Circle. My first office was in this building many years ago, and in fact I represented Fred Stevens, who used to be in the Rotary and moved to this building. As far as I was aware, even back in 1980, it was zoned for the business, and I was unaware that it was zoned residential.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, I bring it back to the board. Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. Motion to recommend the zone change.
Vote to close the board, close the
We-
meeting.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
All those in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to recommend the zone change.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You're good. Thank you very much. You're helping us straighten this out.
John's been
Now
that way
it's
for
gonna
30
be sent
years.
over to my council.
Okay, we have Cornerstone Church. What do we have on this?
They brought in do some color documents.
We have the documents we need from them.
We do have all the documents we need from them.
Okay.
So you should have it.
It's in here.
Okay.
Let me get down to it.
Serious pile.
Here we go. Got the landscape plan, and the trees are in. That's all right? Okay. So, we can go ahead and vote on this one?
I certainly hope you will.
Are there any additional questions? The trees are in.
Yep.
Okay. And I would request that maybe a year from now, the building inspector check to see whether the site plan is when this is constructed, okay, that the building inspector check to make sure that the as-built is the same as the site plan.
As built as per plan?
Do we have any additional comments from the public on this one? Please.
Were we gonna see an architectural rendering?
Uh,
That was requested by
Yes.
So you have,
You wanna come forward and take a look at it?
Yeah. You can take all my.
And the lighting was a big issue too, so that's really important that, you know, I get to see all that.
Here, there's more.
Were the trees put in?
I think you talked
Yes,
about
they
the
were.
lighting.
The trees were put in.
I wasn't
What
at
type of
class.
trees
What kind
were
of trees
they?
are them?
Are they deer resistant because it's just,
Yeah.
they are, but you know the name of the
Norway
trees?
spruce. Norway spruce?
They'll get big.
92.
I have it out right here.
Yes. They have ones on.
You guys okay with the trees?
Oh, I would have preferred it to
better
be
than what
up
they
on
had
a
before, but-
higher berm, because this is gonna be really high, this building, I'm sure. Where is it?
What's the expected height of
This is
these trees?
What is it?
15 feet?
50.
Oh,
Yeah,
50.
they can grow as big as we trim them.
Oh,
They're
wow.
big trees. They're,
Oh, no, I thought you said the building.
No.
the building's, building, I
You'll be able to
believe,
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry.
7
Didn't
to
wanna appear
15
you guys.
feet, something like that.
Yeah.
10 feet at the,
It's 18.5 to the top.
So this is where the garage is going right here.
Right.
How tall are these trees currently?
Currently, I think about 6 feet, 5, 6
they,
feet.
we bought as many in the 6 to 7 and then 8 to 9 category. 8 to 9 foot.
Yeah.
So this is the trees that's in there.
Right. So where's the lighting?
This is where the live.
And remind us, where is the lighting on the shed gonna be?
There is one, there should be another plan that has the lighting spec on it.
Stickers, foundation details.
It's a different, that's the manufacturers. There was one done by Smith Surveyors.
Yeah. The overall, this is professional building, it's not yours.
It's big like this one.
You guys need this?
2 fixtures. One light on this corner.
It's got
Okay.
a 90-degree split in one. It's right next to the door.
Okay, that's on the back side, they're not gonna see that one.
Correct.
This one will not shine on your property, though?
Correct.
It'll go this way?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you.
See what he has it proposed here, and he has a gravel driveway?
Yep.
And this is his parking lot as it is now? For curiosity, why wasn't that building brought right up to here where it would be behind my shed and I wouldn't see it, and would be right up into your parking lot? And you wouldn't need this, but right where it is now is the only view I have towards any type of nature, you know that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, this
why
is
isn't it
all-
brought up?
On the original building plans, the parking lot actually extends all the way.
But it doesn't now.
But
The
it-
parking lot
excuse me.
is where it is.
Excuse me. Okay.
Let him answer.
Let him answer specific questions.
Yeah, this-
We're not getting into any arguments here, okay? We're
There's
asking-
nobody arguing, I'm just
We're-
asking a question here.
Right, but you didn't let him answer.
Okay.
Yeah, the original parking plans for growth. I'm trying not to short circuit us and build a structure where we might need parking in the future. You know, same thing with the stuff behind, the building that's behind here for the future, that's already on the other plans. I'm just trying to do something that's gonna be the best case scenario.
So you're saying in the future, you may want to extend that parking area right up to this building?
Yes, we've already got approval for
Okay,
that.
that's what I'm wondering, why you didn't bring that right up to there, because right here, as it sits, obstructs my views to any type of nature at all, and that's the only real view I have towards nature. You know that.
Yeah,
So, okay.
yeah, and the goal of these trees are, they're pretty good perimeter trees. I mean, they're the best we could get out there.
We'll see. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board on this one?
So just so the residents know, so in a year or so, the building inspector goes back out. And if it's not built per spec, the building inspector has the right to file a complaint against them, fine them, bring them to court, and to enforce this plan be done in the same way. Before you didn't have that.
So that's why
So now you do.
Right,
Yeah.
and
So
that's why I,
This is
my confidence.
this is better security for
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I understand.
Exactly. And we have now a building inspector who will actually do that.
I didn't want to say that, but thank you for understanding, okay.
Okay.
And thank you for the trees and getting them in.
Do I have a motion to approve the site plan?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have to close.
Close your hearing.
No, we are closing. Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a motion to approve the site plan.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Finally there.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time,
Good luck with
appreciate
the
your
garage.
patience.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Give me a couple of days to write your decision.
And enjoy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
The next one is 604 North Main Street. And reopen the public hearing for 604 North Main Street.
Do we have an answer from,
What?
wasn't today, we got an email yesterday that they'd just been submitted yesterday morning?
Where do we stand on this one? Where do we stand on this one? Are we,
The review of their plan?
604
Yeah.
North Main
Main
Street?
Street. We got an email recently? Revised plans.
We have revised plans,
Can we move forward?
yes, you
We-
may, they presented everything that was called.
You have everything you
They
need.
have the revised stormwater that was reviewed
Yeah, by the DPW.
And approved?
and approved.
Okay, very good. So, we're reopening the hearing on 604 North Main Street. Somebody want to come forward and sit up front?
One thing I think was cut, I think we answered most of these site plan questions.
Yeah.
And we added that on the detail sheet, the LA2, that says 6 feet clear to the lowest branching on the trees. That was brought in at the last meeting.
Yeah.
And then also, I think the planning director asked it for the general notes to also be included on that sheet, and they have that, so. Other than that, there are no proposed changes. There's no proposed change to the drainage system. However, we did do the engineering study that was requested.
Yeah.
The engineer is here if you'd like, if you have any questions about that, or give you a brief summary of what we came up with.
Okay.
As you're probably aware, the site was already previously developed. There's still an existing parking lot there. There is no drainage on the site at all now. So any kind of drainage that we're approving is obviously going to represent an improvement. So.
Okay.
But we did do the flood studies that were requested as well. We used HydroPad. And if you want to summarize that, you might want to comment.
Sure. So, so the drainage system was designed to size the
Excuse me, one second. Jonathan Cerruta.
Yes.
Can you come forward
Yeah,
so
sure.
that we get the microphones up here?
Name, address, and you have to leave in the phone number.
Yeah. So I'm Jonathan Cerruta. I'm with Cerruta Engineering, and I did the stormwater management report as well as the operations and maintenance logbook for the project. Thank you. Yeah. I wasn't too sure how you guys did things here, so. So the drainage system was designed to the maximum extent possible, and it was sized to reduce the flow for peak flows for all storm events, including the 2, 10, 25, and 100 year, and it was sized to attenuate the water quality volume. So leaching basins as well as the dry wells meet the required recharge rate for the site. The drainage system and stormwater management report, it meets the Massachusetts stormwater management standards as well as the East Long Meadow stormwater management regulations. If you'd like, I can go into a little bit more detail about it. The total suspended solids, that was, excuse me, the overall site runoff was reduced, and the total suspended solid removal was met, as well as the recharge volume. Most of the site runoff is redirected into the drainage system, which was the leach and catch basins that are located on site. And groundwater is not a problem for the site due to the extremely high permeability of the soils. So.
Okay. Very good. Any questions from the board? Any questions or comments from the public on this one?
Move to close the hearing.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the site plan.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Very good. You're good to go.
Thank you.
One remaining issue, that is, we had submitted stuff on signage.
I'm sorry?
We submitted some information on signage. The building inspector has indicated that we comply with the zoning for a building on the corner, signage on the cornice.
Yeah.
He's also indicated that we do not comply with signage, a ground sign, which requires to be 25 feet back from the street, from the property line, which is also the building line. We don't have any other space on the building to be able to mount that sign where it would be visible. So we anticipate that we would be, denied permission to put the ground sign in, and we would have to go to zoning board of appeals. So if we could have a separate vote and to deny the ground sign part of it, then we would pursue that with the zoning board of appeals.
I don't think we have a sign permit.
You don't have so when this started, you were not going to be coming forward with an application for signage.
Correct.
You said you would come at a later date. So we've never taken in an application for a sign.
Okay.
So that's
All right,
something
so
that.
we're not there yet, okay.
Well, if you're going to put a sign in, you're going to come back before the planning board
Okay.
with a sign.
Sure.
But hopefully our sign bylaw might be amended by that time.
Okay.
And you might not have to come back.
Well, at that point, it would be the building inspector who, right now, he's the one who tells us whether the sign is legal or not.
Right.
Okay? If the sign bylaw goes through, he wouldn't have to come to us, he would just deny it himself, okay?
Then you go to the
Okay,
ZBA.
and then you could go to the ZBA.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay?
That's fine, yeah, but I mean, technically, the requirements for the sign submittal include stuff from the sign manufacturing company, the exact text of the sign.
Right.
And neither of the things have been selected yet, because we didn't have a building permit yet, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Understand that.
Typically, you're not gonna put your sign up until your building is up, so you got time to do that.
Depends how long it takes to get a building permit, but yes, that would be true.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
So I will do your site plan, your decision for site plan approval as soon as I can.
Yeah,
I
and
have
we're
14
required
days.
to file
I have
it,
14
yeah.
days, yeah, and then we'll let you know when it's ready. And
And the appeal period starts from the time of the filing, or the appeal period starts from the time
appeal,
of the...
so I have 14 days to turn the site, the decision around and present to town clerks for recording of the site plan approval. So we generally tell people 35 days from the date of the hearing you expect to put the shovel into the ground. Okay?
Merry Christmas.
Sound good?
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Very good. Very much.
Thank you for your...
Thank you very much.
Take care.
All of your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Hidden Ponds, we're continuing that to,
Well, we have most of our documents, but there's some disagreement in some of the, Al is here, Mr. Joyce is here.
so we're opening up the continuation of the hearing on, actually, closer. This is already done.
Tonight you're preparing to endorse the plans of the subdivision. We have some documents that you will be reviewing, the covenant homeowners declaration, the taxes. There are no back taxes owed, so you can move forward in that regard. Just feel better if I had all my materials in front of me, so bear with me just a moment. Okay, so there was a deed conveyance on the 11th.
Okay.
So some of the documents that were drafted earlier do not agree with what is currently stated in the deed. So Mr. Joyce and I would like an opportunity tomorrow to sit down and clean up our documents.
I think I have updated everything on that.
Well, I think Connie needs some time.
We would sit down together, yes.
I think what I...
We've already agreed to meet tomorrow.
Then fine.
Yes, and Attorney Maynard still has the declaration of restrictive covenants in his hands. He has not had an opportunity to review them because they came in a little bit later than we would have liked to have sent them to him.
Okay.
So you can see that the release, the tax verification is in place. There are no delinquent taxes. The Department of Public Works has approved the illicit discharge compliance statement for which Mr. Joyce has signed off on that for the record. And also the long-term operation and maintenance plan has been presented as stipulated by the DPW.
Okay.
So, again, there's just some disagreement in regard to our legal documents, the covenant being number one. Now, generally, you do sign the covenant, you sign off on the covenant.
Well, what is it on the covenant that there's
So on the covenant,
any disagreement on?
we're still listing, we still have, so on the final pages of the covenant, under paragraph 13, we see that we had Mr. Linder and Mr. Jenkins referenced. So are you holding a
So you see,
warrant
it says,
or you
for title
cash?
to the property, see deed from Ralph Lindner and Daniel R. Jenkins to Redstone Ponds LLC. That's all correct?
Oh, I'm so sorry. You're right. I apologize. So there is no mortgage on the property?
There is no mortgage.
Okay, and I think you can sign off on the covenant.
Okay.
And that way you can endorse the plan, because you know we always like to see that covenant in place before. And,
You may be nervous, Connie. I've been here
no,
for a long
I'm sorry.
time. I'm impressed with the patience of the board.
I was ready to run.
Oh, no, I missed a ski
I know.
day for this.
So, if you would like to
Okay, sign this.
And,
And then-
oh, here we are. Here's the final page, page 5 of 5.
Okay.
Your signature page.
Very good.
So, one thing,
And Tide will have to come in to sign his line.
yes.
And
So now you may endorse.
how many endorsements do we need, everybody?
I would urge all of you to sign.
Okay.
Thank you.
And do we have a Sharpie?
In the. Yes.
I brought one just in case.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. Let's wait until we close the hearing and we all go around and sign it.
Does that sound?
Close the meeting.
And do we have, do we have other
Any
matters?
other business before us, Connie? I don't think there's any other business, is there?
No other business except for, and we're all getting tired.
Yeah.
I have set my, where did I put? All right. I've been wandering around with enough papers all day long. Where is my marked agenda that I was tracking here? That I just,
What you got here is nothing from conservation.
yeah, no, but I was tracking. All right. No comments from conservation, no updates on forms, sign permit approval process.
You did that.
You will be, no, the
Town council
town
sent it to
council
us.
sent it to us,
We
yeah.
need to advertise it
December
to go,
4th.
yeah.
Yep, it'll be heard at the December 4th meeting. Likewise, the commercial vehicle definition. So if
Okay.
anybody's interested in reviewing this information, it's posted outside town clerk's office. And we are trying to also get it uploaded to the
Okay.
library.
Good.
So that's what's going on December 4th. And
Move to
that's all I
adjourn.
have for you.
Got a motion to adjourn, do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's sign.